Guidance counselor, counselor at Carlisle High School, also a CCP parent. So she recognizes that there is no needier person in all of higher education than a CCP parent. She pretty much coordinates CCP for Carlisle. They have a really robust program there. Doug Gagan is from Edgewood High School. That's where my kids go to school. Formerly from Oak Hills High School. And he's the principal out at Edgewood. Edgewood has had a program with us for quite some time, and they're expanding in big ways next year. Ben Hunt is assistant principal. I think you also teach too.
I do, yeah.
At Mount Notre Dame, and we invited him to join us because he has a really unique perspective as being an in-high school partner from a private school, which is not very common at all. And they don't just have a class or two, they have a nice little catalog of offerings. Danielle Reed-Filak represents Cincinnati Public School District as a whole. She's a college specialist. And we talk all the time because there's a ton of schools for CPS. She's formerly of Miami University and has been with CPS now for a few months, but has jumped right in, is doing great things at CPS. And then we have Brian Martin. Brian is from Ross High School. He is a principal out at Ross and has been growing and has some pretty big plans for the future. And so we've asked them to come and share their perspective on CCP. We have some questions for them, and then we'll open it up to the audience.
All right, so one of the things that as a theme behind each of these selections is that where we started with them is not where we're currently operating. So we wanted to gain some insight in terms of their perspective from their district building curriculum perspective. So starting right out of the gate, if you realize that many of you began our CCP relationship a few years ago with just a few college options delivered at the high school. Today, college course offerings are expanded to include more courses delivered at the high school, as well as incorporating online options in your programs. Just give us a little perspective about how that evolution took place over the past several years.
Well, I'll start. I work at a public school. For us, we were very fortunate when PSEO switched to CCP because we currently had on our staff 4 teachers that were automatically out of the gate being able to be hired from a university without any extra credentialing. I didn't realize how fortunate we were. So we were able to start with live teachers in math, in science, in English, and a year later in Spanish, which wouldn't necessarily be courses that I would have picked. It's just because they had the credentialing based on their graduate degrees. We eliminated the science course that we had always offered live, and mostly because I think our pathway, we introduced that for them as sophomores to also get the end of course credit for biology, not take the end of course credit. And it was just too hard for them. It was way too fast paced. They were struggling. And so we removed that. And in that discussion, I met with Lori and said, well, what are some common classes that kids need when they graduate from high school? What are some common classes that we would like to get rid of when they start their 4-year degree, their bachelor's degree? What are the gen ed classes that we can't offer? And I have learned as a counselor that you can be a social studies teacher. I'm a former social studies teacher. You can be a social studies teacher at a high school level, and that umbrella is pretty large. But at a college, it's very finite. There's a psychology, there's history, there's government, political science, and we are all under one umbrella. So what that worked for, and how that worked for us is we realized that everyone kind of uses a history class. Everyone will kind of take advantage of certain classes, psychology and sociology. So we were like, if we know graduates could utilize those and not repeat them, how can we bring them on our campus? We actually had a psychology teacher that has a lot of credits. We thought she would be able to teach it, and she was a couple classes shy. So we brought it online. And then we started doing that with history, and we started doing that. We brought in government. And we did that because it was the end of course. So, it eliminated kids from having to take the end of course. We thought that seemed attractive, and we also piloted with that. When they were finished with that first semester, we added a history course just because we know you might need that. So we approached it. We got very fortunate with all the teachers that were already credentialed, and we approached it with how can we bring online classes that we know kids are going to need. There have been hiccups, obviously, with bringing classes. A hiccup that I currently face is that I don't have teachers wanting to go get credentials. We were lucky enough that they were already here, having the credentials, but now they're like, well, if it's online, so that's kind of the hiccup. I would prefer a live teacher any day, but our teachers aren't motivated because they know we can bring it on without necessarily them having to do extra work.
I think I'd actually kind of follow up that answer. For us, again, private school, we kind of lucked into our first course that we were teaching. Our instructor was already an adjunct here. And so it was easy enough of she happened to be an adjunct here in a biology class, so we started offering that in our building. But then, kind of in the same way, it was a matter of, starting to figure out, what are the classes that are going to be most beneficial to our students? And what we've really kind of found was, in our building at least, the sophomore year is really a sweet spot for us to be able to get those intro level classes offered to our students. And one of the things that I keep seeing is that it keeps improving the strength of our junior and our senior level courses then as a result. And we face the same kind of credentialing kind of struggles and issues sometimes. But for us, I think it's a very similar story. We took advantage of the low-hanging fruit classes at first. We also started doing the comm class. We had a public speaking requirement already in our curriculum. Why not? We have a teacher that's able to be credentialed for it. And then we've now started more systematically building at the sophomore level in particular courses with instructors that's in our building to carry those out.
Our path was a little bit different. We noticed that not a lot of our kids were really taking advantage of PSEO. And as we kind of looked into that further and talked to our kids and talked to our families, we got some feedback as to why that was the case. Miami Hamilton from our high school campus is 10 minutes away, and we had a very, very low number of kids going that route. What we found out was kind of a pleasant surprise in that our kids told us that they actually like being in our building and like don't want to leave and pursue opportunities off campus, which was a nice thing to hear from high school teenagers. So we started looking at how could we build our program. We had, I think, 3 dual credit classes in 14-15, and now we are up to offering, I believe, 15 for the 2021 school year. 15 CCP classes through Cincinnati State, all in-house. We haven't really done a lot to push online because of our location. Our kids aren't very likely, for the reason previously stated, to go off campus. So we felt like building an in-house program taught by our instructors was the way to go, and we've really kind of developed a pretty robust number of offerings. And like Ben and Heather said, we were also fortunate that we already had a good number of teachers in-house who met the qualifications to be hired as adjuncts. So we were fortunate in that regard as well.
And I got a little bit unique experience. I first started with the CCP and talking to Dr. Mott, and Lori about this at Oak Hills, and we had 26 AP courses. We had 5 different dual credit partners, and understanding pathways and everything. It was crazy. And what do we do here and there? And what's the floor? What can you charge? All that was nuts, and you're just trying to just survive those first couple years. And now to see how it's evolved, and I switched to a school that has 9 AP and I want to say 6 or 7 CCP courses in-house with 2 more starting next year, and It's now how can we service not just those top kids, but those middle kids.
Right.
So we're looking at English 101, English 102 for kids that maybe are going to go more to that technical route to get that 2-year degree. The math 105. So we're really pushing that and saying, hey, how can we support all kids and give them opportunities to grow? We're fortunate to have a number of teachers that do meet the criteria here, and we do have kids that take online courses. They do a lot of online government where they either are in a study hall or they do it at home and come in a little bit later to take courses.
Danielle,
Yeah, for
on behalf of
Cincinnati.
16 high schools.
We do. We have 16 high schools with Cincinnati Public Schools, and we have wonderful staff in the audience today. I see lots of familiar and wonderful faces. I would say this is so our buildings develop individual master schedules, and up to this point, we hadn't really had the capacity to develop a strategy around College Credit Plus. We were really leaning heavily on our amazing teachers, so some of you are here today, to say they wanted to offer this opportunity to students and to really build that into their building and advocate for that opportunity within their building. As we move forward with developing a strategy across the district, we really want to align the opportunities with the state report card. So specifically in our buildings where we're not seeing high achievement in advanced placement, we're not seeing that 3 or higher being earned, we want to ensure that there are opportunities to the building to have those students that are capable of doing year-long work versus performing on a single instance test to be able to demonstrate that via a College Credit Plus course. So again, continuing to evolve our strategy, we want to support the courses that are currently being offered, support the teachers that are currently offering those classes, but moving forward, we'll really be looking at how graduation seals are tied to College Credit Plus coursework, and then how can we advocate and support political science and American history, as well as our competencies in English and math via College Credit Plus, where we're not earning those through advanced placement scoring.
Well, that's a real good lead into, I'm going to ask the question anyway, because we all think about how opportunities and how our things that we're involved in are benefiting us. We look at CCP from a college perspective. We always try to understand the high school's perspective, but performance evaluation is different and slightly modified. But looking at the CCP partnerships that we're involved with, and how do they contribute in any way to your own school district report card or your performance feedbacks? How does that work? How do those contributions influence your district's decision-making regarding offerings that you either are working on now or maybe like to pursue in the future?
So this is something that we've looked at a lot in Cincinnati Public Schools. So one, I don't know if anyone is familiar with the actual policy that influences state report card, but essentially students have to already have demonstrated readiness, college readiness in some regard, and then they can earn an additional bonus point, or I think it's a 1.5 weighting in your bonus points if they have also achieved a College Credit Plus credit, like three credit hours or more in that space. And so we're trying to ensure our buildings are well informed of that, so that as they develop their strategies and make their selections, they're doing what could be most informed for their individual building moving forward.
We've tried to not let the report card tail wag that dog. We've been very fortunate at Ross, to perform very, very well. But and I don't mean to sound cliche or trite, but we've really tried to focus on the teaching and learning in the classroom, and that really impact what we do in terms of our instructional practices, and we've been very fortunate, and that has translated into report card success. Now, don't get me wrong, any public high school principal in the state who says that they don't care about the report card is lying. But we've tried to not make that our focus, and focus on the things that we believe truly impact the learning. So I wouldn't say from our perspective, we didn't set out with the goal of saying, we're going to add more CCP classes because it's going to help our prepared for success indicator on the report card. We said we're going to offer more CCP classes because we think that it's what's best for our students and our families.
And then at Edgewood, we've kind of looked too, and not knowing what competency was and finding out that it may be in March or March 1st, and then Cleveland.com had the score, possibly what the score is going to be. So we were like, okay, what can we control at a district, because in-district credentialing is so nebulous. I'm not sure what a black belt, green belt, all those belts do, how to get them. So we were like, how can we help our kids get college credit if they did not pass the AIR score? So we've looked at the math, we've looked at the English, had those discussions with Cincinnati State, and coming up with plans to offer those courses for kids that did get a 2 to possibly get credit. Now, a 2 could be competency, but we're still going to give that opportunity for those kids to take a college course, because those kids are going to probably go get some further education.
And I would agree with Brian. We never used report card as any part of implementing this program, and mostly because I'll bash on our administration, so apologize in advance. But we've had very transient administration that hasn't really been invested in a report card, to be honest. And in my opinion, had always been behind the game with even what prepared for success is, or how CCP or college ready would even impact a report card. It has been frustrating for me. I've been a longtime employee of Carlisle, and I feel like there were a number of years I knew more about the report card than my administrators did, even at the top level from superintendents. So absolutely had nothing to do with it. And honestly, it's a bonus point that we had trouble getting people to college ready, a certain percentage college ready. So we found that that bonus was nice, but the kids that we really needed to target were, how can we get kids college ready? So it didn't really help us or hurt us. And I think our prepared for success grade was a C-, maybe D+, I don't even know. I can argue what prepared for success really measures, which has nothing to do with if you're going to be successful, but that's a state issue. So.
And from the private school perspective, I know that the report card clearly doesn't, we're in a different boat, and that's the reality for us at this point. But for us, I think it's the same thing. We weren't letting this drive our decision making. What we were letting drive our decision making was what's best for our students, and looking at what are the pathways that are going to help our students be able to get have the most success when they leave our building. Our board of trustees, our strategic planning keeps pushing us to continue finding new and better and more innovative ways to, and so this has been able to kind of feed off of those kinds of plans. So
I'm just curious, as a follow-up to each of you responded, directly from your own perspectives, but have you noticed any difference from your parent community in terms of their expectations for what becomes available or is available? Are they comparing their own school district options with what they hear from other people, or is that not a trend or a theme that you're running into?
I don't know that I think because the demographics of our district are shifting a little bit. There's more and more of an expectation for those types of offerings, but I don't know that that's the driving force for us. I think once again we just try to evaluate what we think is best for our students and make the decisions that way. And I think quite frankly it's kind of an arms race. I mean, we pay attention to what other schools doing. We pay attention to what Edgewood's doing, and I know vice versa, and we hear that Carlisle has a good program, so we pay attention to what they're doing, and so I think that's part of it as well. Is no one wants to be left behind.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
I think my biggest difficulty with our demographics and when I talk to parents is there's such a huge learning curve. I have my CCP meeting and I'm like, I want to tell you about CCP, but unfortunately I got to teach you about college first. And that conversation, my CCP meeting, which should be maybe 45 minutes can go an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes, because their understanding of college is they're coming in because they think their kid is smart, and it's not necessarily about that. And so we have to talk. I have to break it down and talk about, what is your end goal? What does your student or what does your child want in the long term? If you want to take a foreign language that we don't offer, because we graduate 110 to 120 kids a year, we're a very small school. So if you're not happy with our course offerings, that's a completely different desire to participate in CCP than someone who's trying to get 2 full years of college paid for. So if you know your end goal, then that makes my conversation with you a lot, and so in one meeting with 100 people, it's really hard to have all of those conversations. So I would say my challenge with parents isn't necessarily what other districts are doing. They're just so, our demographics, there's not a lot of college educated people, and they're just so behind the game, or not even behind the game, but intrigued of what this means for them. And so the conversations are wildly different. And so I have my general CCP meeting, and then I try, and it's very difficult, I try to meet with every CCP kid one-on-one to have a one-on-one, not necessarily their parent, but to say, okay, what's your goal? What are you looking for? What's your long-term goal? And I find that I'm just teaching them about college a lot, which is nice, but it's not. CCP has become a full-time job 2 times a year, where I'm like, I'm not doing anything else except CCP, and sometimes that's really overwhelming.
Just before we open it up, most of all of CCP is guided by the regulatory rules of the Ohio Department of Higher Education. Cincinnati State still has tried to figure out how best to make sure that we can provide contributions where we can provide contributions to our partnership agreements. So we have several elements of our memorandum of understanding with you as partners, but also everybody wherever they're participating from other school districts. For example, in our MOU, for students that come from your buildings and come to Cincinnati State's campus and take a course on campus, the college is contributing to provide that opportunity for the textbook materials for that course, rather trying to relieve that burden from the school district. We have an agreement that all of our CCP course enrollments are reported as alternative funding, so that students that do leave your schools and participate in the course on campus are still getting reported as CCP floor rate tuition, which may be behind the scenes for many of you, but it's from our perspective, we try to do what we can do to help benefit our partners. Can you talk a little bit about how any of those MOU partnership agreements might have helped contribute to our partnership together, and how that's utilized?
The book thing is huge. I mean, it's just gigantic, because working with all the different universities at Oak Hills, it was like, okay, you have to go take a PO here and then go get the books here, and then Miami says, oh, you have to get in their account, preload their account, and then it's just a mess. And then you get these books back, and then you get these booksellers calling you at all times, hey, you got any books for me to buy? And it's like, I don't have any. I'm not even sure where they are. They may be in the library, and just and so having that book thing eases the process and helps, even with central administration, understand CCP and say, okay, this is not as tangled mess as it's supposed to be. And it's been really beneficial. I appreciate that.
I would chime in on the floor rate from the public school, or from, the private school perspective, because our students have to apply for funding, and oftentimes our students are going to receive some funding, but they may not receive all of the funding that they're looking for. So that floor rate really does help us with our students and our families in being able to have the conversations of these are the students' goals, and this is how we can make that still a possible reality at significantly less than what it would be had they been enrolled as a freshman student on your campus.
I mean, I think that is important. Obviously, the answer to everything, or most everything, is money in a lot of cases. So, but I think the other important thing for us, and I'm not just saying this because they're standing here, is just the relationship. I can pick up the phone or shoot an email to Lori, and I know that she's going to get right back to me.
I owe you some money.
Same thing with Tim, and that's been a big piece for us. The 4-year colleges. We tried to, and I am going to talk bad about Miami now, but we tried to get Miami to come in and do some in-house stuff with us, and they wanted absolutely nothing to do with even the conversation. They're happy to take our kids
Yes.
in the money if we want to send them to them, but they were not interested in having a discussion about what our needs were. So, like I said, that's been the big piece for us with Cincinnati State is just the relationship and the willingness to work together to grow our program and meet our kids' needs.
Yeah, I think too, one thing I super appreciate is we have some pipeline programs with other institutions. So we have a UC IT pathway at a couple of our different locations, and there's an expectation that those students earn supplemental credits in order to meet the goal of going into UC's program. And Lori's been great about even working with us at schools that don't have teachers that are credentialed to teach the mathematics class that those students need, of how Cincinnati State can provide that resource to us, whether it's through a proctored setting or if we hit the capacity of offering 12 students is actually, but we communicate 15 to our high school buildings just because we may lose some students on that roster list. That they would be willing to work with us to provide a professor in that space, because we know our students aren't particularly successful in taking online coursework. So I think we really appreciate the relationship and resources Cincinnati State is willing to invest in our buildings, especially since it's a top destination school for a lot of our graduates. So having that relationship building early and those credits early, I think facilitates the process for a lot of our population, which is a majority first generation.
Thank you. For the audience.
I wanted to hear more about the online with the proctor, like however you set that up, or how does it work?
I'll tell you what we do, only because I'm in charge of building the master schedule at our high school. Another reason we started bringing some of these is that I was getting some feedback from our treasurer that we don't want to lose students to go off campus. We don't want students to go to, some of our CCP students go to Miami University Middletown, and some of them go to Sinclair. We're unfortunately really far away from this campus. We have a few that have attended the Middletown branch campus of Cincinnati State, but our treasurer's like, listen, if we lose them, we're losing the state dollars. So if you can keep them here, even though we're paying the MOU for Cincinnati State, if you can keep them on campus, we get those state dollars. So in bringing online courses, when I build the schedule, I try to create classes. I have an online class that might be offered third period, and I assign a social studies teacher who will be a proctor to that. And what does that mean for that proctor? It's honestly different. For right now, we have historically 3 proctors in our district, or in our high school, but one actually just joined, so we have 4 this semester. And they do things wildly different. But what that means is you're gonna be the liaison to those students. They're gonna be assigned to you. You're not teaching them content, but they're gonna be assigned to you this third period, and you're gonna be the liaison to help them get on Blackboard, to help them understand all of the things, to help them use that book code, to initialize everything. But also from a selfish perspective, you're gonna keep up with their grades. You're gonna be able to look at what they've been doing all along. And at the end of the semester, you're going to put their grade in our system for me. So I don't have to input that or have my secretary input that. So, say that again?
What's the number of students that can be in a room?
Well, it's a classroom for us, so it kind of depends on how many people are signing up for a particular course. Some courses through the years have a history of reputation of they know they might be more difficult. So I have noticed next year going in, we've already kind of looked at numbers. There's a particular class that's a lot smaller, but it could be anywhere between 15 to 25. This year we do something interesting in our math, because our numbers are so small for calculus. For years we taught AP calculus, and it might be every 3 or 4 years. So we decided to offer calculus Math 251, which I think is Calc 1 here, but simultaneously she's covering the AP curriculum. So we're going to call it AP. They know they're getting these 5 credits at Cincinnati State, but everyone has an opportunity at the same time to take the AP test at the end of the year. And that, for us, is just because we have some super competitive kids in there that want to have an opportunity to apply to very competitive colleges, and they feel like if they can score a 5 on that, they want to have an opportunity to do that. And if they don't, they already have these 5 credits that are guaranteed.
The online course option that she's talking about is a Cincinnati State opportunity. These are Cincinnati State courses that are the same courses that are taught for all students here at Cincinnati State.
And
The only distinction is, in this particular case, if a school district has a specifically designated population, we may create a separate section.
Right. Some of our classes online have been separate sections, and some of them have been with other schools. But to me, that's neither here nor there. Like the teacher has a particular job that period to just track and keep their kids, be responsible for their kids. So if 20 other kids are in that class, those kids don't know it.
So
And we can provide further information.
I think it's important to note, and I'm not sure how Carlisle is navigating this, but state law does explicitly state you're not supposed to combine AP and College Credit Plus courses. So I don't want that to be like the takeaway. But it's important to note that is a distinction they make in state law.
Again, probably sometimes lack of administration, because they do it.
But even if it wasn't called an AP class, it could still sit.
Yes, on the transcript, that is fair. I don't think it is called an AP class, actually. We listed as Calculus 1, Math 251.
In those classes, like say the social studies example, do you have students that are taking different social studies classes with a social studies teacher, or do they all have to be taking a certain social studies class?
Us particular, so far, next year will be different, and we might try to combine that. But so far, we've determined these 15 kids are taking History 111, and you will be the proctor. These kids are taking Psychology, I think it's 105, Minute 110, I can't remember. Psych 110, and this particular teacher will be the proctor. Sometimes with scheduling, if you're a counselor and you build a schedule, sometimes with scheduling, they weed themselves out and they can't get to that. So I might put them in the space with the other professor, because, fourth period's more convenient for you. So one person might sit with this professor or this particular high school teacher, but in reality, the other teacher's still responsible if there's questions. And our school is so small and intimate that that has worked.
We have other schools that they'll have a designated, bell schedule set aside for students taking a wide variety of classes. Now that proctor may not be involved in each of those individual courses because it may not be a course that's set aside for that school, but there is a person in the room who knows how to get into Blackboard, knows how to navigate that kind of stuff, and that almost always works out really, really well.
Besides the argument what's best for our children, okay, besides that argument, we offer AP, why should we offer CCP?
I had this discussion a lot at Oak Hills, and then speaking to another curriculum director, she's moved on to Mason. She even asked that question to College Board, to Trevor Packer, and he said, part of it is if you just want credits, go to the CCP route, that route. If you want to take that curriculum and take that national test, that pressure of that test, then go the AP route. I taught AP for 15 years, taught AP Gov, AP European History. There's unique ebbs and flows with that course. But also, as my kids get older too, there may be courses that they want to take that AP doesn't offer with those 29. So it's really about having that partnership and seeing what's best for each kid. And maybe they take 2 or 3 AP courses, and maybe then they take a couple CCP courses and blend it together to get that associate's degree, or whatever is possible.
I agree with everything he just said. I will tell you a problem that we have in our very small district. It's heartbreaking in my opinion. I have a senior, I told Lori, I have a senior daughter who is going to be a Division I college athlete next year. And for her needs were completely different. I have a junior boy who scored a 35 on his ACT as a freshman. So their needs were completely different. And what I have seen as a parent, because we have a very robust, and our school is so small, we have seen AP classes go by the wayside. And I think that's really unfortunate for that select group of people that probably would want to go that route. And the reason that we have seen them go by the wayside is not because we don't value them. In the scheduling process, when you can choose between AP History and American History, entry-level American History, or 6 credits of it, we were seeing that one person was picking AP History and 15 people were picking the 6 credits of American History at the college level. And so then we had to have really come to Jesus conversations with our staff about, are we setting aside one teacher for one kid? Like, what is our magic number to have calculus? What is our AP calculus? What is our magic number? And through the years, they're just not, we offer them every year, they're on the scheduling sheet, they're not signing up for them. And that's heartbreaking for that select group. Now, I also agree there's a lot more CCP classes than AP. And there's a lot you can do once you create that, but I think in our school, it doesn't meet everyone's needs, and that can be really unfortunate.
I think it's super important to not duplicate. If you're having success in AP, you need to be really intentional about what College Credit Plus courses you're offering. We're trying hard to inform our in general, we have very informed counselors, but in one particular school, we're trying really hard to inform that if a student gets a 3 or higher in AP English, they should not be then directed to take College Credit Plus English in their senior year.
Right.
That it's offered in building. That's a duplicate credit for the student on a college transcript. And we don't want any student feeling that disappointment when they get to that advising desk at their intended college and saying like, wait, I was told to take both of these classes, like this doesn't make sense to me. But I will say, I think that for us at Cincinnati Public Schools, we marry the two together. So at a lot of our schools where we're not seeing advanced placement achievement in a 3 or higher, that advanced placement course is being offered junior year to prepare students to take College Credit Plus coursework their senior year, where they can earn that college credit. So that's the progression that we're utilizing, especially in the realm of English. But ultimately, it really is like what best fits your students and their needs and their learning style, and if they're doing well in these single instance tests, or if they're doing well over a year-long course or a semester-long course.
Yeah, we've really tried to not replicate, CCP and AP courses. So we've tried to be very strategic about that. But you heard the student panelists say it earlier as well. Kids have figured out CCP classes are easier. So
and they're cheap. I mean, parents are paying $90 to take the AP test to possibly get a 3.
Yeah.
It's guaranteed and it's free.
Yeah. So if you're a kid or a family and you're looking at the menu and you could say, wait a second, I can take this class, get guaranteed credit hours. I don't have to take a very high stakes test at the end of the year, and the class is probably going to be easier. I mean, most kids, most families are going to go that route, and we've kind of operated from the perspective that it's not really our role. Our kids, our families are our customers, so shouldn't they be determining, what we offer? And it's kind of like a natural selection. Mm-hmm. If our families are choosing CCP and that's what they want. Who are we to tell them, nope, you need to take AP, not CCP. So that's kind of how we've tried to operate. And most of our AP classes have still held on, because like I said, we've really tried hard not to replicate.
Just a question about kind of at the middle school level. So how involved and maybe how well versed are your middle school counselors and administrators when it comes to talking to parents about CCP?
I'm going to take this from the private school perspective. That's one of our biggest challenges. The question was about middle school level counselors and administrators and how versed are they in College Credit Plus. From the private school perspective, the grade schools are still behind the ball, and there's a lot of catching up and educating of those families that we try to do before they get to us, but I would assume that we may be different from everyone else here.
No, I agree. I sometimes we're frustrated that they're not versed in high school classes. Just the transition from middle school to high school. So throw out college, and it's I agree with him.
really had any success with increasing our staff that are credentialed. We want to keep our kids on our campus. Our kids want to stay. I'm in a district with multiple high schools, and there's a big discrepancy in what we're able to offer strictly because of our staff and who can be credentialed and who can't. I mean, I do love Cincinnati State's ability to like give us some of the online options in the proctoring, but ultimately, has anyone found, are you doing incentives for staff to get them the CCP credentialing? Like, does anyone address that?
We would have liked to. We applied for a grant, but unfortunately it didn't really pan out. It's hard with teacher union contracts. Like, there's actually stipulations that we as a district cannot fund tuition regardless of funding we have for dual enrollment programs. That isn't something that we can offer as an incentive for teachers that offer to teach this, so we really are relying on other incentives across the district. So for example, our teachers do earn pay increases once they achieve their master's. They earn pay increases once they achieve their master's plus 36 graduate level hours, I believe. I'm sorry if I messed that up, CPS.
30 plus 45.
30 plus, there you go. So there are a lot of our teachers that are working on graduate level work. We have a board directive to our human resources in right now to pull HR files of teachers that have those credentials, but maybe we at the district don't know they have those credentials. So that's something that we're continuing to strive for strategically, so that as we start to create a more formalized strategy around graduation seals or around opportunities for our students, that we know teachers that already have those credentials, because we don't have those sorts of incentives. And although you can say like you get to teach the high achievers, ultimately that's only an incentive in and of itself.
I know we started a new course, the Math 105, and I had two teachers I really thought would be really qualified to teach it. We talked to Lori, and she said, oh, they're going to have to take a class this summer. And they said, it's great, but no thanks. I love my summers. I like to boat. So we also had another staff member that did have a master's in math, and he's also very talented, and so that he's going to teach that course. So it's really trying to create that incentive is still a work in progress.
We just to jump in that too. We have had districts approach us about, so we're down to 3 candidates. Can you take a look at their credentials and tell us who's the most? We've had schools that have done that to us, have asked us to participate in the hiring process in that way too. So we're happy to do that.
I can say from the university side, I mean, I've seen a massive change there in the past 4 years. That information, if you're not familiar with it, is on the Ohio Department of Higher Ed CCP page. Down on the school administrator side, down toward the bottom, there's a link to universities all across Ohio that have ratcheted up, not master's degrees, those have always been available, but 18 credit certificate, graduate certificate programs in X. But remember that when a faculty is evaluated, it doesn't mean they necessarily need 18. They may already have 3, 6, 9, 12. So I would do that checkpoint first.
Right behind you.
Doug, you said something that was interesting. I know with all the new pathways that we all have to figure out who's going where how. You mentioned something about AIR and EOC courses, that students that could not pass those, you were looking for CCP classes that you could use instead of.
Yep.
Have you been successful in finding any?
Yeah, we're going to do it next year, but depending on what the competency score is, it may take those kids out, because we target kids that had a 2 on the algebra test or on the English language arts test, and we're going to place them in Math 105, which is quantitative analysis.
Quantitative
reasoning, sorry. And also English 101. And so we were in that process, but March 1st is coming when the state's going to magically tell us what score is competent. So
quantitative reasoning sounds more difficult than algebra. What exactly?
It is stats based, course.
So our math department is suddenly left, but but I will tell you that the quantitative reasoning course, it is a transfer module approved course. It is the course the students would have to take as an Associate of Arts course on our campus. So and it is I am not a math person, and that pretty much extends, although I wish the class had been in existence when I was getting my undergrad, because that's the class I would have taken. But yeah, we have several schools. Edgewood's kind of leading that next year. They're ready to go to push. We've got several other school districts that are looking at that option as well. If you're looking at the state gives that guideline, I forget what it's called, but the math, and in the counselor session, we're going to talk a little bit about math too, but the state gives you guys that. Are you algebra based? Are you stats based? Are you quantitative reasoning based? This is in that quantitative reasoning pipeline. And what we're going to be using is Algebra 1 as a multiple measure.
And it counts as that Algebra 2 or higher course.
That's correct.
For high school credit too.
Yeah.
Over here.
Thank you.
Question.
I wanted to ask, does a proctor have to be a certificated person? So it can be like a paraprofessional. Thank you. And then secondly, for those schools who have gone that route, as far as like your master's schedule and what that looks like, if you do have a certificated teacher who's proctoring, is that sort of like an extra plan bell? Do they have one less teaching bell? I'm in a school where thankfully I have teachers who absolutely love to teach. And for some of them, asking them to proctor a class would be like a punch in the face.
Yeah, we run into that.
Just getting an idea for what some other schools have done or sort of what has been planned around that would be very helpful.
I'm in Laurel High School, and I'm certified in the proctors. I'm certified in the courses, and they don't do any of that. The kid at the study hall, I might have to. I don't get an extra training period or anything. I'm just responsible for that student.
I would say the variability of what a proctor does is more varied than what they don't do. What they don't do is teach the course.
Right.
Because the course teacher, faculty, is a Cincinnati State faculty. But what we encourage the proctors to do is connect with those faculty and figure out how can we best support this. Sometimes it's more administrative and sometimes it's more support oriented, but that varies so much. But we can talk about that separately. And I want to thank so much our partners for coming in this morning. National and everybody else, I'd encourage to remember where they were at one point, starting small and building from that.